23 top and high-level delegations, including 12 presidents, and one host, Polish President Andrzej Duda. The 10th summit of the Three Seas Initiative kicked off in Warsaw, where Montenegro and Albania will officially join as associate states and Turkey and Spain as strategic partners. I believe that thanks to the new members, cooperation within the initiative will become even more meaningful and fruitful, and the summit taking place in Poland itself will contribute to strengthening ties between all member countries and initiative partners. The summit began with a business meeting between President Andrzej Duda and Croatian Prime Minister Andrzej Plenković and US Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. At 7 p.m, the Polish presidential couple held an official dinner. I believe we are going to have a very good meeting and we are going to discuss security issues. I think to a very important extent, especially energy security. The 10th anniversary summit is not only a time symbolically to sum up international cooperation, but also a time to set directions for further development. This is in huge contrast to the Polish presidency of the Council of the European Union, which is there, but as if it did not exist. The Three Seas Initiative is very important, especially for the President and for the political camp close to the President's position. Perhaps the importance of this summit is less from the point of view of the current government. The meeting of international delegations is accompanied by the Three Seas Initiative Business Forum and partnerships talks on the economy. Of particular importance, however, is the visit of US Secretary of Energy, who came to Poland at the special invitation of President Andrzej Duda.
People of Poland and to President Duda, who for years have worked together to bring our countries even closer.
Chris Wright came to save the previous Polish government's efforts to build a nuclear power plant in cooperation with the United States. This was strongly advocated not only by the United Right, but also by Polish President Andrzej Duda. After Donald Tusk and his team took power, there was a clear start to slow down this investment, as well as many others. You have to try to somehow connect these issues at the moment, because the deadlines have diverged in execution, so the bridge agreement will hopefully help with that, but it all just shows that this issue really needs to be watched very closely. This vital issue concerning Poland's security. Polskie Elektrownie Jądrowe, Polish nuclear power plants, and the Westinghouse-Bechtel Consortium have signed a bridge agreement in the presence of Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the US Secretary of Energy, setting the framework for further cooperation on the construction of a nuclear power plant in Choczewo in the Pomerania region of Poland. Thanks to this agreement, we have changed many key issues in 16 areas. Thanks to this investment becomes more secure. Guarantees give us all a sense of security of this investment.
The American government and the Polish government. This project, the scale of this project, will bring tens of thousands of jobs here in Poland and tens of thousands of jobs in the United States.
The opposition does not believe in the good intentions of the Polish government and says this investment under Donald Tusk's government will not be built. I think it's a makeshift deal in the context of the nuclear power plant because, to my knowledge, it will not be built in Poland under this government. Today, I know that the talks around the nuclear power plant are centered not on the US, where the civic platform has no input and no favor with the US government apparatus either, but more around the French, or an extension of the feasibility of the German tasks. So it is difficult to think that the Civic Coalition's presidential candidate for the President of Poland, Rafał Trzaskowski, will continue to strengthen ties with the United States, as President Andrzej Duda did. The annual March of the 3rd May Constitution is a major event organized by Polish people in Chicago, and Karol Nawrocki will visit the Polish-American community and participate in the event. Citizens' presidential candidate Karol Nawrocki will travel to the United States on the 3rd of May. He seems to want to follow the path set by President Andrzej Duda. This coming week is expected to be decisive for the future of peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. That's according to US diplomats who were involved in mediating between the two countries. Washington is analyzing the conversation between Presidents Trump and Zelensky during their meeting at Pope Francis's funeral in the Vatican. A day after the ceremony, North Korea officially admitted that it is taking active part in the war on the Russian side. The regime in Pyongyang has officially confirmed that Kim Jong-un's soldiers are fighting on the Ukrainian front. While the presence of the North Korean military is at best an open secret, since Ukrainian forces have been regularly clashing with its soldiers for more than 6 months, the official announcement of this may be worrisome, as it points to Pyongyang potentially getting more involved in the conflict, which will be difficult for Kim to hide, mainly inside his own isolated state. The truth cannot be hidden. Sacrificing North Korean youth for the survival of the regime is an inhumane and immoral act. The government calls for the immediate withdrawal of North Korean troops and makes it clear that if the current military collusion between North Korea and Russia continues, we will not stand idly by, but will respond firmly in coordination with the international community. According to the US Secretary of State, talks with Ukraine and Russia on the start of peace negotiations are entering a critical moment. There are also many indications that the conversation that took place in the Vatican between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky could have a major impact on the American attitude towards the Kremlin.
They have a tough road ahead, okay? And we had a good meeting. It was a nice meeting. It was a beautiful meeting. He wants to do something good for his country. Thinks he's doing a good job, and he's working hard. We'll see what happens. It's a very complicated deal. He told me that he needs more weapons, but he's been saying that for 3 years, you know. He needs more weapons, and we're going to see what happens. I want to see what happens with respect to Russia, because Russia had been surprised and disappointed, very disappointed that they did the bombing of those places after discussions.
Trump was referring to the attacks on Kiev, Kharkiv and Odessa last week and the previous ones on Kryvyi Rih and Sumy, where most of the victims were children. US media also seem to have shifted their perspective on the war. Ben Shapiro, one of the most well-known conservative commentators, interviewed President Zelensky in Kiev and offered Americans a better understanding of what is happening in Ukraine.
The only way Russia will ever accept a deal will be if it leaves open every possibility of re-invading and then completing its plans. This is not a border dispute. This is not a border dispute. It is a dispute over whether Ukraine should exist.
Moscow, on the other hand, claims it is ready for talks while at the same time rejecting US proposals. On top of that, the Kremlin claims to have pushed Ukrainian forces out of the Kursk region. Kiev claims otherwise. Our military continues to carry out tasks on the territory of the Kursk and Belgorod regions. We maintain our presence on Russian territory. To my fighters in Pokrovsk and in the rest of the Donetsk region, I want to thank you for your perseverance. The Kremlin has set to retake the Kursk region before the 9th of May as its army's main goal, because the 9th of May is celebrated in Russia as the anniversary of the end of World War II. The Putin regime has also announced another ceasefire from the 8th to the 10th of May. Many suspect, however, that this is precisely when they will bomb Ukrainian cities.
A power blackout that has affected most of the Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal were hit by a widespread power outage that paralyzed public transport, caused large traffic jams, and delayed flights. The outage caused chaos in parts of Portugal and Spain as traffic lights stopped working, causing gridlock. Transport networks were halted. Hospitals were left without power, and people were trapped in the metro and in elevators. Spain's electricity network operator said it was recovering power in the north and south of the peninsula, which would help to progressively restore the electricity supply nationwide. People visiting Barcelona's Sagrada Familia quarter were caught in the chaos. Traffic lights were out and local police arrived to direct cars and pedestrians at the main crossroads just outside the basilica. The blackout left hundreds of tourists and local residents shocked and confused.
Because the little green man didn't drive across the street.
The crossing thing didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Starbucks is closed, so you know right away.
So we're hoping this doesn't affect our flight home tomorrow.
Here you go. No phone signal. The cash register and the credit card machine aren't working either. Since half an hour ago, I can't even call my boss because nothing works. We are by the Sagrada Familia, and it is full of tourists. Not everybody has cash on them, and obviously we need a phone signal to move around. It gets complicated, and people don't know when it'll be back. We have no idea. I just started my shift. It was my colleague who was driving. But nobody knows anything, basically. No, we know nothing. In Barcelona, metro transport came to a halt, with buses running randomly. Some sightseeing buses allowed passengers to hop in, as the drivers were unable to check tickets without the internet. Most shops were unable to serve customers without electricity and internet connection for electronic payment. Working under satellite coverage, some smartphones were receiving news informing of the nationwide outage. In the streets of Madrid, confusion and disruption quickly took hold. Traffic lights across the city went dark, causing traffic jams at key intersections, such as the Cibeles roundabout, where officers were deployed to manually direct vehicles. Radio stations reported that parts of the Madrid underground were evacuated, and many commuters were left stranded without buses or metro services. The Spanish and Portuguese governments met to discuss the outage, which also briefly affected parts of France, and a crisis committee was set up in Spain.
The decision on the date of the papal conclave was made after a meeting of the cardinals. The proceedings will begin on May 7th with a mass. The cardinals will then march in procession to the Sistine Chapel. Later that day, the first vote will take place, which is reserved for cardinals under the age of 80. There are currently 135 of them. In the following days, there will be 2 votes in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. To become the new pope, a candidate must receive 2/3 of the votes. Due to preparations, the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican Gardens, and the necropolis are now closed off to the public.